to this meeting of the Planning Committee being held on the 31st of October 2024. Right, as it's a public meeting, there's a certain protocol I have to run through, just as the usual one, but it's required to do it, so let's just get on with that. All visitors must sign into the visitor book at the entrance to Kilncraig, so this includes council staff from other buildings. There is no planned fire evacuation drill or alarm test today, so if the fire alarm is activated during your visit, you must exit the building immediately. Council officers will direct you to the nearest fire exit and will escort visitors to the building fire assembly point beside the Silver Man at the top of Parliament Walk. Kilncraig staff should report to their floor's assembly point. You should remain at your assembly point until directed to reoccupy the building and only re-enter once the fire marshal has advised it is safe to do so. Please do not attempt to leave the site by vehicle until cleared to do so by the fire marshal to ensure that the access routes are kept clear for emergency vehicles. Please note that this is a public meeting and the members of the public may be in attendance. The meeting will also be recorded by the clerk and published online for public viewing after the meeting. Otherwise, the taking of photographs, including screenshots, audio or video recordings, are not permitted during the meeting unless with the express permission of the chair. And members attending virtually activate their cameras where possible to enable you to join by video, and can all attendees mute their microphones when not speaking. Please do not come in during items unless I invite you to do so. If members attending virtually wish to speak at any point, please indicate by clicking on the Raise Your Hand button, and members in the chamber should also raise their hands, and I will bring you in at the appropriate time. If members have not been able to access all the papers for the meeting, please indicate now. Good. I will now ask the clerk to confirm it all that. We don't need to do the roll call. I think we know who's. You see, we've had apologies from councillors and Phil, and we have one member vote online. Councillor Keogh, right, good. Right, that being done, let's move on. Right, item 3 on the agenda. Of course, important point. Thank you, Chair, Clerk. The declaration of interest. Have any members present any declarations of interest to make regarding any of the items on the agenda for today? No, there being none, we shall then proceed to item 3, confirming the minutes of the Planning Committee meeting that was held in Kilncraig on Thursday, the 2nd of May at 9:30. I'll just mention the page numbers, and if there's anything on those pages that is amiss, please raise your hand and I'll listen to that. Well, I will raise the first point. It's a minor one only, but just for accuracy. The minutes near the bottom of page 5, the minutes of the local review body held on Thursday, the 22nd of May 2024 should be 2023. I think there was two occasions that's mentioned the decision as well. So that's a minor correction there. Anything else on page 5? Page 6, page 7, page 8. Okay. Those minutes. Are we happy to approve the minutes?
Yep.
We are. Thank you. Right. Item 4. This is the application of approval for reserve matters regarding the residential development of 51 houses, etc. at Brands Hill Road in Socket. Will be given to us by our Principal Planner, Keith Johnston. Keith.
Thanks, Chair. Just outline a summary of the report before you. It's our assessment of an application for matters specified in conditions, an MSC application for further residential development, land to the west of Brands Hill Road in Socket, and that follows the granting of planning permission in principle. The application provides details of the design and layout for a further 51 houses on the land to the west of Phase 1A, which itself was approved for 71 houses and 86 houses of Phase 2A by committee at its meeting on 28th September. Phases 1A and 1B will be built out by the applicant Miller Homes. The site is relatively remote from the nearest houses at 10 acres to the east and from the core path which runs from 10 acres to Tullibuddy to the south. As the number of houses is above the threshold of local development, which is 50 houses or more, It is considered the application should be determined by the committee rather than appointed officers under the scheme of delegation. Phase 1B would see an extension to the approved layout containing a mix of 39 detached, 12 semi-detached houses on the land to the north of the Spine Road, which will be constructed to serve the wider PPP site. The design and layout will follow that established by Phase 1A, with links into the approved road layout. As per the master plan for the development, there are no areas of open space or play required within Phase 1B. Like Phase 1A, however, street trees and hedgerows and plot frontages will be included. Planning Permission Principle sets out the terms within which details of development of land has to be progressed and the scope of the information required for consideration at the MSC stage. This included 8 planning conditions and a Section 75 obligation. The terms in Section 75 are summarised in the report. The PPP approved up to 1,000 houses on the site. The acceptability of subsequent applications for MSC largely depends on whether they accord with the terms of the PPP. Paragraphs 3.11 to 3.18 summarise the responses from consultees. There are no objections from consultees. Points raised in the consultation of transportation has either been addressed by the applicant or can be effectively regulated by the proposed planning conditions and the road construction consent process, which is administered by transportation. While off-site works relating to transportation are regulated by the Section 75, a condition is also proposed which restricts construction works proceeding on Phase 1B before these have been fully signed off by the Council. Conditions will also be attached relating to submission of information post-commencement to address contaminated land section price and requirement of a construction environmental management plan as advised by Environmental Health. There are no notifiable neighbours. The application has to be publicised in our advertiser as part of statutory publicity requirements. No objections have been received. Section 4 contains the planning assessment of the application in relation to the development plan, which comprises National Planning Framework 4 and adopted Clackmannanshire Local Development Plan. It notes that the site is allocated for residential development in the Local Development Plan and has the benefit of planning permission in principle. Subject to proposed conditions, it's concluded the application would not be contrary to the relevant policies in the development plan. Section 5 summarises other material considerations. As an MSC application, key determining factor is whether it satisfies any relevant conditions attached to the planning permission principle. Paragraph 5.7 provides a summary of our assessment against the various requirements of the 8 conditions and concludes the application would satisfactorily address the requirements of the conditions, again subject to the proposed conditions in the recommendation. The approval of the application will not prejudice the requirements of the Section 75 obligation, which is part of the planning permission in principle for the site. The report concludes that the application, with accord with the relevant provisions of the development plan, has satisfied the requirements of the conditions attached to the planning permission in principle, and there are no other material considerations which would outweigh development plan support for the application. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in section 2 of the report. Okay.
Thank you, Keith. I'll now throw it open to members present to ask any questions. Councillor McTaggart, followed by Councillor Law, and then Councillor Simmons.
Is there anybody present for the developers?
Yes, I believe we have a representative from Willow Homes just behind you there.
Right. I've got a number of issues some which have been raised with me from constituents and some which I've seen myself. So I would just like to, if possible, share these with the developers and see if we can get some clarity. It would be better if they were actually sitting to see them.
Do you want to join? Keith will guide you through this.
Can I just check if Gavin Lloyd, who's the agent for the application, wants to join us? Yeah.
One particular incident was raised with me. A man who was walking along the active travel route with his dog was confronted by an earth-moving machine, and he was asked to vacate the active travel route while the earth-moving machine made its way out. The man refused, quite rightly in my opinion, and he asked the operator to turn the machine off while he negotiated around the machine. Now, these kind of things are, in my opinion, just not acceptable. Kids going to school have also been told that they have to wait while the machine comes out of the active travel route. And these incidents seem to be happening when there's work being done either side of the active travel route or on the active travel route when diversions are being put in place to allow for the drainage to be put in place. I saw that for myself. I was actually asked, a resident asked me to go up and have a look for myself. While I was there, there was an earth-moving machine there, a few hundred yards into the active travel route. We went to enter the active travel route and a man come up and told me to stop. And he says, you'll have to get off there until we get the machine out. I just don't find that acceptable. That is an active travel route. That is a route to school for kids. And you're told, get off the route while we get a great big huge machine out. I don't think so. I'm really annoyed about it. I'd said to the man that spoke to me, is there no another way that you can access the area that you need to work on that prevents people from having to vacate an active travel route while this is ongoing? And he told me, no, this is the only way we can do it. Now, again, I find that unacceptable. There was no willingness to even sort of say, well, go back and we can look at that. It was just, no, this is how we have to do it. I'm also concerned about the accumulation of water. Now, I know that there's drainage being put in that's going under the active travel route. However, from what I can gather, these are in two specific places. The accumulation of water seems to be quite widespread. So I'm wondering how they're going to get these areas of accumulation of water to these places that are going to drain them off effectively. Now, I say effectively because it's all very well putting drainage in there, it's all very well putting studs or whatever else in there, but you have to make sure that the water can reach the area where it can, it has an area where there will be egress rather than collection. Talking about collection, that I noticed that there's quite a few subsidence areas that are acting as collection pools for water. Deliberate, I don't think so, but they're there and they're no fenced off. That is an attraction for kids. So if there's deep, quite deep areas of water that are, it's unsupervised, it's no fenced off, you've got kids going back and forth to the school there, that is an attraction for them. Other concern is the overall damage to the active travel route. That route was never designed to take traffic. That route is for footfall. In the event that starting to collapse, what do we then do as a result of this heavy machinery going back and forward on that route that is tarmacked for footfall? It is not designed to take cars even, never mind these massive machines that are laden with their buckets are full of material, which makes them even heavier. So I'm concerned that the active travel route is going to be damaged beyond repair, and then it's going to mean that it can't be used at all. So these were my main concerns. However, a number of the residents are telling me that when they've asked questions, they've just been fobbed off, particularly about not being able to use the route and about the accumulation of water. One other point, there's 2 wee cottages on the edge of Branshill Road, stroke Roundlewood, pensioners' cottages. These cottages have been subject to flooding in the past, where to the extent where they've actually had to be pumped out. What are the plans to divert water away for those homes, as well as the other homes that lie lower than the proposed development? And I'm wondering if to take this traffic away from the active travel route, is it possible to put a temporary bridge, and I say bridge in inverted commas because it could easily be a couple of heavy steel plates that go across the tiny wee burn that runs along the side of the active travel route to enable access to the areas you need to work in, rather than going up and down that route. So thanks very much for listening to my rants.
Thank you, Chris.
I think in the first instance we asked the officers to respond. Are they aware of these issues and do they feel they have been dealt with by conditions? Karen, do you want to pick that up? There's certainly conditions regarding construction management, but there's also a slightly separate but related issue about the core path and its closure or its use or requirement for construction traffic during the operation of these early stages of the groundworks to the site. And it sounds like there are areas of conflict and friction, between that and the residents and the school kids who are using that route, which, as Councillor McTaggart pointed out, was designed specifically, to take kids from Slough through to Lawrence Hill Academy. My initial thought on this, and I'll put this to the agents and the applicants, and I'm conscious here that the applicants are Villa Homes for the Phase 1B application. However, a lot of this to do with the wider development of the site, which is largely Alan Water Homes' responsibility. But I know that Gavin Lloyd here represents Alan Water as well, but I would maybe, before Gavin comes in, put it to him that there may be a suggestion here that there could be a meeting, possibly involving the developer and Councillor McTaggart, whoever you feel you maybe want to come along to try and get on site and try and talk about these issues and deal with it as a round the table. That to me seems like the best way to try and deal with what sounds like something that might last certainly a few months while we're at this stage of the development. But I'll pass on to Gavin to pick up on that.
No, I would totally agree with what Grant's saying there. There's obviously quite a number of points there that are not necessarily linked to the planning application that's before us now, but are clearly linked to the ongoing relationship, if you like, which is going to, the site's going to be developed over a long period of time. So we have not been, I'll say, we've not been greatly involved in site operations. We've been more involved in the planning stages. However, I'm aware that Alan Water Homes have put out a circular, and we arranged that for them, and everybody round about has got a phone number, a contact number. It would sound that that's possibly not working as well as it should be, that dialogue, and I think that a round table meeting with yourself, and Alan Water Homes and ourselves and anybody else that's got an interest would be very worthwhile at this stage. So I've been taking notes as we're going through there. The only one that sort of I can't give an answer in the way of, from a planning point of view, is to do with water on neighbouring properties and all that. Obviously that has been subject to a full flood assessment, and actually there's obviously two things. There's the short-term situation, and then the final long-term situation, and the final long-term situation will effectively result in betterment for the neighbouring residents. I know some of them, when they see what's going on the site, find that hard to believe that is the case. That when you have a that's that amount of arable fields with limited field drainage and water running off of it. Actually, when you develop that, you're creating a better situation because the water's being contained and channeled and treated. But as far as the use of the active travel route, and when and how there's diversions on the active travel route, and how it affects local residents. I think that's something that let's do what I suggested, nip that in the bud and get it dealt with as soon as possible.
It does seem to beg the question of two questions. One about the active travel route. Has it been considered in the process so far that that is unsuitable for movement of plant? And if that's the case, then why is plant on the path? And think of the structure of the path itself. It won't be underlaid with the kind of material that's required. So that would bring in a clause for repairing any damage to that. Is that an approved route in the master plan set up? And the second question would be on the flooding. I accept totally what you say about the final result, but during the means to that end, there may be considerable inconvenience to some of the residents thereabouts. Some of that inconvenience might be minor and tolerable, and some of it may not. So then we need a sort of remediation option for significant disruption to any employees, any residents during heavy winter weather.
Well, I think that could probably be taken up in the meeting as well, to be perfectly honest or true. I mean, it should probably be a meeting to discuss any concerns that the residents have got in the short term during construction. As far as vehicles going up and down the core path, I was aware that vehicles were crossing the core path, and I was aware that there's been an application to put in short-term diversions to allow drainage connections to be made. I certainly wasn't aware that vehicles were actually going up and down the core path. So if that's happening, that's news to me, and I think that needs to be dealt with as well.
Are the crossing points reinforced?
Pass. But as you say, if there's any damage that is done, then I think there's no doubt that would have to be put right. I don't know whether the crossing points are reinforced.
Yeah, with track or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Not sure of the details.
Do you want to comment
Finally on this? I think Commissioner Tangle's going to come back in, but I'm happy to arrange the meeting, and if you want it to be on site, Commissioner Tangle, then that's absolutely fine as well. Obviously, there'll be some PPE requirements around that, but we can deal with that.
I would like it to be on site, and I would like it to include some of the residents who are being disadvantaged. What I would want to add is, I didn't see a solution as being, when we make a mess of this path, then we'll fix it. Because that is, and I'll say this in capital letters, an active travel route to go to school. So therefore, fixing it once it's all churned up isn't really an option. Because what happens to these kids during really bad weather, we're coming into bad weather, what happens to these kids who are trying to get to school and having to go through a quagmire to get there because the path is churned up with these heavy machines? So I didn't see it being as a result being right. When we make a mess, we'll fix it. Just didn't make a mess. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think if there are problems, it sounds like there are for residents and school kids experiencing just now, we're at a relatively early stage of the development, but let's try and sort of nail that down. Just now, when you look at the plan, there's an obvious tension between the route of the core path and the development, both sides of it. That's understood, but it has to be managed extremely well, I think, to make sure that everything works for the people involved. So I'll take it upon myself to liaise with Cavan and get that in the diary as soon as we can.
Thanks.
Councillor Knock.
I wasn't going to mention the core path, but now it's been brought up. I'm quite dismayed actually to hear about this, because I know that Lawrence Hunter, the council officer, had worked for a plan to put in diversions for the people to walk while the work was getting done, and I definitely didn't hear that there would be vehicles going up and down the path, so I'm pretty disappointed to hear that. My question is in regards to the surface water, because I know in 4.16 it's saying that the council flooding officer still not received all the information required to demonstrate that there's no risk to flooding from groundwaters. It does say that this could be effectively regulated using suitable wording conditions. I'm therefore asking that it is, but also just wondering why, in my opinion, it's a big issue, ground surface water, why that information hasn't been provided yet.
Yeah, I think in terms of the flood risk, there was a flood assessment for the whole site, which was dealt with through the conditions from the Planning Commission in principle, but there isn't a specific report relating to phase 1B, and that's why we've proposed a condition just to require that information to come in and be fully considered before construction works can start on site on this particular phase. So I think in the general position, kind of flood risk has been assessed, in principle, and as I say, we had no objections from SEPA and no objections from the flooding officer through that approach. So it's a case of using that condition to get that information in, which is specific to phase 1B. It was felt that it was still a reasonable approach to determine the application, but on the basis of the condition there to ensure that the information does come in and we're satisfied with it.
Or you can, if you want to keep the clarification then, that the wording here said it's considered that these issues could effectively be regulated. Now, if we pass this paper today, if we approve this paper today, we're approving a could and not a will be. That I think will be of concern to members present.
I would say would rather than could. I mean, in terms of the planning condition, to discharge the condition, you will have to be satisfied that there's, the risk has been adequately addressed. So I would agree, perhaps the use of the word could, it would be considered and we'd have the information to satisfy ourselves.
Would is still subjunctive, I think one will be considered.
Yeah.
I think my colleagues, I think, are of that opinion that we want, in order to be able to prove this, we have to prove of something that's quasi-factual, not an aspiration kind of way. It's just, I know it's just semantics, but they're quite important semantics. That we know exactly what it is we're signing off here. And I think that's a general principle of these kind of things, that everything should be resolved when the paper comes to council, so that we know exactly what it is we're saying yes to.
I think Will is fine. I mean, it's quite normal that something like groundwater flood risk, which is a localised flooding issue, not a whole site flooding issue, is dealt with by conditions. And there's been regular dialogue between roads and transportation, who are obviously the flooding team, and the applicants, engineers as well, to nail down these matters. So the condition is in there. So although whether it's could or would or will, the condition is in there. Deal with that, as Keith said, to satisfactorily address it before anything's constructed.
Where in the paper do we see that the condition is in there?
The conditions are, maybe refer Keith to point to the particular one, but the surface water.
That's page 10.
Page 10.
Page 10, condition 3. And 3, C and D.
D, is it? D and D.
So the condition does say the full details shall be,
Okay.
so, and they have to be submitted and approved in writing prior to construction works commencing.
Following details shall have been submitted. Okay, so there's certainty in that. Fine, I think we're happy with that. Right? But again, it's just a general principle for my mind as a person responsible ultimately for a public body responsible for the decision. We know exactly what we're signing up for, because we have issues in the past where things have been to be agreed, and I'll be bringing that up later on, to be agreed, and we had one situation in Tillicountry where the agreement was never reached, and that's caused big problems. So without getting into too many specifics, I think we want to try and make sure that everything is a fact. Nothing is left to chance.
I've noted.
Right, thank you. Councillor Law, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, it's just in regards to 2.7C operating hours.
What page?
Oh, I don't know, there's a question. Hold on. Oh, no. Sorry. Looks like it's page. Hold on.
Page 12, is it?
Yeah, page 12, 7C.
Right.
It's just in regards, because I know there's been issues before, it says from 8 o'clock. I was like, does this mean that the gates from the site should not be open until 8 AM? Also, what vehicles that are contractors to the builders, should they not be parked up outside the gate, to the site, before this time? Because I know that that can be an issue, and I'm just thinking of all the kind of that road plus the residents to the side that I don't think they want to be bothered by construction traffic prior to 8 o'clock in the morning.
So the question is specifically, what does this cover, this?
Yeah, just in case, because I know there's previously been issues where sites have been said 8 o'clock, however, before 8 o'clock the gates have been open, there's been vehicles moving around, or before 8 o'clock there is the large dumpers that are moving the earth that have been queued up outside the site. So, and I think previous have been told that, oh no, it's a contractor, that's nothing to do with us, but to me that is, and it's a thing that really affects the people that live around there and also the road users. So it's just wanting to get some clarification that I think people would like to hear.
I think it's a perennial problem, to be honest with you. The 8 o'clock, to my mind, would be activity on the site. But I think, as Councillor Laws pointed to, we have had experience in the past where contractors will turn up early for site, park on the street, maybe keep their engine idling. It's a really difficult thing to control and monitor, I have to say. I'm not going to give you a definite answer that we can deal with that, but and I think part of it comes down to just the conscientiousness and you know the sort of the approach of the developer to make sure that doesn't happen. But you know, if it's not something that's on site before 8 o'clock, I think it's really difficult for us as a planning authority to actually deal with it. So we are sort of somewhat reliant on goodwill, I would say, in that one.
Maybe address that at the coming meeting.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think so, yeah.
Fiona, that you?
Yes.
Councillor Vasily?
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to go back to the process, if you like, just for clarity in my own mind. So this application in detail was approved at appeal. The council didn't get away in terms of education provision, for instance. But what I'm interested in my own mind is once the reporter approved the development, was that devolved back to us as a local authority to agree the Section 75 agreement and relevant conditions, or did the reporter provide further guidance in terms of model policies, etc., for us to cover standard government policies such as affordable housing and provision for GP provision, etc., which don't appear in the conditions? I'm just wondering if you can explain that process, Keith or Grant.
Well, the terms, the conditions in the Section 75 were all agreed and signed off as part of the appeal process. So the reporter issued a decision which contained the conditions, and the council and the developer had to conclude the Section 75 obligation before the appeal decision was finally issued. So that's all been established prior to these NSC applications coming forward.
That kind of, I was going to, that explains in part the process. One of the key things under this, not key things, it's probably not the most important issue in terms of housing, flooding, transport, but the percentage for the contribution to the arts strategy seems to have been agreed, and you just highlighted that was a requirement for the Scottish Office reporter. It's more to do with our processes, Keith. Was there any community engagement in that arts strategy at all in terms of local people with SOCI, and indeed the option was to have a contribution per house of £250 or a strategy or a hybrid between those. So who was the ultimate arbiter of that decision?
The condition, there has been proposal for public art submitted, which is going to be art being provided within the site, and the applicant, Alan Water, had commissioned a company as public art to come up with concepts. My memory is that there's a commitment that taken forward is going to involve public engagement with the community, and that approach has been submitted, and the services advised that we're satisfied that that would be a suitable approach to providing public art. That the kind of final details of that is going to evolve as the site develops in terms of the various phases of development, to provide that, but there will be public engagement and involvement with the whole community.
So is there still an option in that consultation to have a contribution off-site?
I think that's something that maybe have to be raised with Alan Water. I think our view is that providing it on site would be a suitable approach, and there was going to be a kind of option of a number of installations, primarily kind of following the core path route through the site, and that was going to be the approach that was going to be adopted rather than any off-site provision. I think we felt that was an acceptable approach.
Right, thanks, Keith.
Any other questions? I'll ask a simple one. On page 10, it mentions a residential travel pack. What is a residential travel pack? That rucksack or something?
It's what the new residents receive when they move into their house to tell them about where things are, how they can get to them, what's timetables, that kind of thing.
Understood. Thanks. Right. Through to the next one. Yeah, in the paper, we have comments to some of the kind of block narrative and in italics. Are they the officers' comments? Who's making these comments? For example, page 17, garage doors, etc. Comment the applicant has submitted. Is that the applicant making that comment, or is it the officer making that comment?
It's the officers, that's our responses to the points.
Okay. Just clarifies that, that's fine. On that same section, the last sentence talking about it's considered reasonable to include a planning condition to regulate the commencement of the development, blah, 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 blah. Are we being asked to approve that in this? Or is that just simply a statement about the future? I'm just not sure. You know, so again, it's these kind of woolly statements. It's considered reasonable to include. Vague. Do we want that condition or do we not want that condition?
Yeah, well, the wording there is effectively saying that it would be a reasonable approach to use the planning condition, which would tie works commencing on phase 1B or restricting works commencing until the specification of works for section 75 have been agreed fully with ourselves and transportation. So it's really just trying to say that would be a reasonable approach under kind of planning. And use a condition.
You may well be absolutely right that it's reasonable, but is it going to be in the conditions or not?
It is, it's in the conditions.
It's in the conditions. We come back to narrative again, which is clouding the issue, I think, slightly. I think we need to be a little bit more precise about that kind of thing. Okay. Sorry, I think you're on this.
Yes.
I beg pardon? Do you want to ask a question? Oh, sorry, Fiona. I'll let Councillor Lord come in now.
No, it's just in regards to number 5, on page 11, just about the trees, and it says the tree survey and a protective fence will be put around. I know in previous developments, while a fence has been put in, the ground around trees has then been built up, which has then made that the water goes in, and effectively when it rains creates a pond around the trees. And that was my concern, that even though we're putting fencing around trees, could there be that to ensure that the land around the trees is not heightened, so that then the water pours into the trees and can pretty much kill off the tree because it's getting drowned. I just wondered if there was any comment on that.
Just to say, in terms of the assessment that's been undertaken, as I say, there was a tree survey report and assessment undertaken. The kind of site level shouldn't result in that impact on the shelter belt on the north boundary of the site.
Councillor McTaggart, please. Yeah.
Sorry, I meant to actually mention this earlier when we were talking about the potential collection of water and how that will be directed off the site. The response was that this is all part of the overall flood management and that this will be addressed as the development progresses. I'm more concerned about now. How long is this development likely to take before all the drainage and everything is in place to ensure that this water is directed in a way that is not going to impact either the travel route or the properties around it? Because although I noticed earlier it was said there's no notifiable neighbours, I would challenge that, because it might not be notifiable for certain elements of the development, but certainly for other elements of the development, the neighbours are going to be impacted in one way or another. So I just wonder the length of time it's going to take before we can see that water directed to an area that is deemed not to create additional flood pressures. And what's going to happen to the water in the meantime that's building up? The capacity of water is building up on other parts of the site because of the original first phase that is being completed, because that's kind of pushing the water in another place. Thanks.
I'll maybe invite Gavin to give some overview on site phasing, but I think the real sort of tenet here is that there should be no additional runoff from the site before, during and after the development. That's a basic tenet of development, that the sort of what we call greenfield runoff rates, i.e. what it was pre-development, should remain right through the whole scheme.
There already is runoff, because it's actually collecting on the travel route already. I mean, it's ankle deep in places along the active travel routes.
Yeah, in terms of those properties you were mentioning earlier on, they should feel no additional flood risk whatsoever before, during and after. That to some extent is about how it's designed and constructed for the development that's completed, but it's also an ongoing site construction issue for different phases as well. And obviously there's different elements of the drainage, the strategic elements, and then there are the phase elements that are sort of going to be built in as each phase is completed. But perhaps Gavin can give a more informed view on the phasing, at least, or timing of those elements, Gavin.
Well, I think the sort of key point is that for each phase, there is a drainage strategy which incorporates, we've got rain gardens on this side, we've got swales, and then we've got the end of line suds. And actually, that all has to go in first. I mean, it's not so much a planning issue as just a contractor. That's the process that, you know, the drainage goes in first, the suds will go in, the roads will go in, and that will go in before the houses are actually, the construction has actually developed to any great degree. So that's one point. As far as the possibility of the contractor moving earth about the site and doing initial earthworks, and what that does in the short term, I don't think that's really necessarily covered in a planning context, but I think that's something we raise at the meeting, just to try and make the contractor aware of residents' short-term concerns and try and reassure the residents that the contractor's doing the right thing. But from a construction and a phasing point of view, each phase has its own associated SUDs and can't be built without that happening first.
So will these SUDs be fenced as they're developing? Because again, I'll stipulate the active travel route with children moving back and forward where there's bodies of water appearing.
Right, the SUDs that are part of the finished proposal, if you like, rather than any temporary measure, that'll be fenced off during construction, but it won't be fenced off once it's completed. There's not large areas of SUDs, ponds, if you like. It's been done more with rain gardens and areas that, if you like, they're like well-designed soakaways with planting. That's what Grant and his planning team have actually been quite instrumental in pushing the developer down that route and trying to steer away from the big ponds with fences around them that we're seeing or have seen in the past. And that has been detailed out and is included in the proposals.
That's fine. Once everything's done and we've got these elements in place, there will be a natural monitoring those kind of things. I'm more concerned with during the development phase that these bodies of water are not just lying open for anybody to jump into.
During construction, a contractor, be it Allen Water doing the infrastructure work or Miller Homes doing site specific, they've got a duty to fence off and secure any areas of work that's being constructed on. So if that's not happening and there's machinery moving, it's fair enough. There's instances where machinery may move from one area to another, and that has to be done with banksmen and in a satisfactory manner. But the areas that are actually under construction, so when they're putting in the drainage and they're creating the SUDS basins, end-of-line SUDS basins, in the same way as putting up the houses themselves, that has to be secured off. And if it's not, then there's an issue a very serious issue that the contractor on site, there's contractors on site have to address.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Sorry, my ears perked up when you mentioned swales. We've got swales, I know, in our park, and my speaking to our roads team is that we were looking to not put them in again because they've kind of failed there. If they are going in, can I check? I take it these are maintained via the factor and it won't go on to the council to maintain?
Sorry, I was hoping someone would jump in because I'm trying to remember exactly what we have been through this. There's been quite a lot of discussion, and you're absolutely right that the roads department are steering away from what I'd call maybe historical or traditional swales. This is where we've introduced the rain gardens, and the rain gardens will be planted out to effectively look like the feature rather than just sort of a ditch at the side of the road that doesn't always work. I'm trying to recall who exactly maintains each section of that, and I'm struggling to remember, but we've had a lot of discussion back and forward to make sure that the roads department I think it's fair to say that the officer involved is very concerned that the council don't take on the maintenance of something that they should.
That's my comment.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, I know that the end-of-line swales is going to be adopted by Scottish Water, and I know that I'm pretty certain the rain gardens, in fact, are maintained. Exactly where these lines are, I can't recall off the top of my head.
I think that's right, and I think we've all been on this learning journey over the last 15, 20 years with regards to SUDs, about where they are, what they are, how they're maintained, who maintains them, and a lot of that kind of learning has gone into sort of shaping the SUD scheme for the site, looking at exemplars from elsewhere, trying to make sure the SUDs are actually a sort of positive part of the sort of public realm of the landscape of the site, not something that's tucked around the back and out of sight and maybe a little bit, sort of forgotten and messy and smelly and everything like that. So to me, this is opposite. It's actually putting it in the public realm, and it should be something that enhances the scheme rather than, as I say, something that's functional and really probably tucked away in narrow examples of that. So, and as Gavin's pointed out, there's been several hours spent round the table thrashing out with the developer, the architects, the engineers, road service, getting that right.
Whose cost is maintaining? Is it the council's, or will it be through the factor, through the residents?
Well, the council, I probably know, is not looking to adopt everything. Anything. We've got our own adoption standards. There are elements of public realm alongside roads and drainage elements that serve roads that we will have to adopt, but there is a lot that will be factored, and then Scottish Water come into the mix as well as a sort of end sort of authority that need to be considered, and they have their own adoption standards. So it is a bit of a kind of sort of three-dimensional puzzle sometimes, getting SUDs to work to make sure that nothing's sort of orphaned. So as I say, a lot of that sort of knowledge we've gained has gone into this to make sure there isn't anything that we don't know who will maintain.
And following up on that, is our non-adoption stance on this, has that been delivered to and agreed by?
Everything's been discussed and agreed with the developer. Yeah,
Thanks. On page 21, 4.10, near the bottom, it's talking about at the time of compiling this report, the final scope of these off-site works had still to be agreed by the council. So I just wondered if we had gotten beyond that point and have they been agreed?
They've not been agreed as of today's date. I think there'll be a meeting taking place the week after next to just thrash out the final arrangements for those details.
Is there any possibility that the agreement, when reached, will materially change this plan in any way that might disadvantage the council?
The meeting, things to be agreed are kind of the scope of and final details of the works off the site, so they won't affect the terms of this application in terms of the 51 houses on phase 1B. It's the design of works that the developer is going to have to deliver out with the actual site to connect, improve active travel links to school and to Saltgate Tower Town Centre.
And if there's a Mexican standoff, who arbitrates that?
If there was disagreement, this is through the Section 75, there is an arbitration process built into the Section 75 agreement. So if we didn't agree, ultimately there would be a third party involved. But as I say, at the moment, we're fairly confident that we will get agreement from what's required.
Thanks, Keith. But that actually leads me on to my next question about Section 75 on page 28 and page 29. 28, first of all, under education, the second bullet in the third column says cost to be agreed. That comes back to me asking about who arbitrates, because if it's still to be agreed, that seems to be that there's a crack in China there a bit, isn't there? You might not get a perfect result. Similarly, on the other page, design and cost of the off-site transport works, I think that's what we're talking about. Being assessed by the council prior to agreement, that makes me nervous, those kind of things.
just to cover those points there, to the Section 75 is set up for things to be agreed between the council and the applicant, and a timescale for that. And for these elements that can or aren't able to be agreed, the Section 75 builds in a clause where a third-party arbiter comes in and determines that. So the Section 75 kind of takes care of all that, and these things are ongoing.
That's good.
Yeah.
Who might the third party be?
It'll probably be, I would suggest, probably a surveyor appointed jointly by both parties.
And that arbitration is binding on both parties?
That's yeah.
Right, good. That takes that one off. Thank you very much. I think that's all my questions. Councillor Barsili?
just very quickly, play areas have been a bit of an issue between the council and Allen Waterhomes, or maybe not the council and Allen Waterhomes, but the communities when the developments have been marketed. So this can be either to our own planners or to the Allen Water rep. What provision has been made for equipped play areas within the sites? I notice in phase 1B there's no open space play area being provided, but clearly in phase 1A there's a events play area. What undertakings can we have from you that you're going to provide equipped play areas for? Is that your vision for the site?
One of the conditions of each of the MSC applications is we submit an updated master plan. So every time one of these MSC applications comes in, there'll be a revised version of master plan to take into account any prior decisions. That highlights a number of play areas. We've got a trim trail proposal in one area, and we've got a possible mugger pitch, and that's way into the development. You're absolutely right, there's no play areas and open space in 1B, but there is significant open space in 1A and south of 2A, 2B and C, and also within future phases. I think 1B is the next phase immediately to the west has got a significant area of open space, and I believe from recollection it's got another play area. The actual design of these play areas will need to be bottomed out, but as it's not specifically, it doesn't specifically affect there's nothing within the red line boundary of phase 1B. It's probably not suitable or appropriate to get into the detail on this one, but we will need to come back to, I think that's one of the conditions of the master plan application, if I remember rightly, actually, that the details of all of the play areas need to be agreed.
But thanks for that. I'd just like to highlight this. As an elected member, that's been one of the big issues in previous Allen Waterhomes developments, and it'd be good if we can nail down the play equipment and who's maintaining it to Roscoe standards, etc. So I know these are small issues compared to the bigger issues that we're dealing with in transport and flooding, which might have a larger impact on development. But at the end of the day, the people that are moving into our area, this is the things that they raise with us, and it's an ongoing sort of sore that doesn't seem to get resolved very easily. So if we can resolve it right at the very beginning, that's important for us as elected members and our new residents that we represent.
If I could just say that, as you say, it's possibly an easier one to answer than some of the other points that have come up. And I don't think it's, if, in further discussions with Keith and Grant, we were requested to bring forward the detailed proposals for the play areas, which again could subsequently be developed as the master plan progresses. And I don't think we'd have any issues with that. That's something we could address sooner rather than later.
Okay, any other questions from members present? I have a question for the clerk in this one. The question that came up earlier on about woulds and coulds and shalls as far as planning conditions are concerned, in order to avoid having to change the report in many locations, is it reasonable for us to request that a minute be made that in approving the paper, we are making an assumption that anything that's proposed as a condition that could or should be applied, we understand to be will be applied, so that we know exactly what we're voting for. Can we have that as a sort of overall overarching minute? That any of the comments where that is the understanding of the committee is that there's no doubt about these conditions will be applied.
I hear where you're coming from. I would suppose I would have to defer to my planning colleagues because they're the ones that have created the conditions, and I don't know whether or not those are positive obligations that we're asking them to do, or whether the could, the will, the may, is because what we've got at the front end in terms of the recommendations are all the positive obligations that are going to be put on Miller in relation to this application. So, notwithstanding some of the language within the actual body of the actual report, the actual conditions here are, I think, clear in terms of, you know, what, subject to any approval or not, you know, if there was approved, these would be the conditions that would be laid out. But my colleagues will be able to tell me otherwise in terms of some of those conditions. Sorry, I'm deferring to you now.
No, it's something we'll take away. I think that there is a could or would or will be addressed by condition. The variable is that condition in the decision. So I think that, but I think maybe for a future reference, we'll make that more clear in our comments, officer comments, if that's helpful. But I can assure where we say in a comment in response to a consultee or an issue, this matter can or could be addressed by condition. That condition will be in the report. Will, yes.
Well, on that understanding, I'm certainly content to propose the paper then as it stands with that understanding. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second it.
Councillor McTaggart, thank you very much. Okay, do we wish to debate the paper and then want to make comments on it? Councillor Quinn looks as if he might have something in his mind here.
No, I don't mean to look like that.
You don't mean to.
Aye.
Councillor McTaggart.
Thanks, Chair. I just that I'm sorry to labour this point, but I'm finding that the contractor, and I don't want to pinpoint any particular person, but the contractor seems to be less cognizant about the elements that are within their control to make this as easy as possible for the people that are affected by this development. Now, we've not had the fact that we refused this development a while back. That's no disputed. And there's a bit of a bad feeling about the fact that that decision was overturned, not necessarily for us, but for the residents that are affected by this. They're sort of feeling, well, our council said no to this, and then that was overturned at appeal, and these people have come in and disrupted our lives. And I mean, the B908 was one of the biggest gripes that I got that took our road away from us. And like, I'm sorry, but it wasn't a council road, we couldn't prevent that. However, if the contractor can be a bit more responsible, and if they can have a bit more empathy with the people that are, for example, well, I wouldn't say empathy with the people using the travel route, I would say absolutely understand that travel route, that they have the right of way of that. No machines and no contractors. These kids going to school and these people that are using this for leisure purposes, it is their right of way, not the machines. But empathy with practices and things, but it's some things are just maybe a wee bit daft, like the contractors, people who are coming and going to the contractors, an area that's marked off as a yard. They're parking their cars in Roundlewood, in the wee sort of cul-de-sac bit in Roundlewood, which is preventing residents from parking their cars there. It's wee things, but all these wee things add up to big things, and then the people who are being affected by this become less tolerant of everything that's happening. So I would just ask that the contractors are a bit more mindful and aware of the disruption to people's lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I certainly think you've made that point very emphatically.
Thank you. I'm glad I've got the point here.
I think the message has landed all right there. So I agree with you. I think that the management of public perceptions is very important to this. Any other? Councillor Civic.
Yeah, we've been on a long journey with this application. And there's no doubt in my mind that both the applicant and our officers have put a great deal of hard work into this, and you can see the details of the plans, etc. I suppose that doesn't hide our disappointment as a council and as a planning committee, that, and we have to take some responsibility for this, that we haven't secured some of the normal things that we would expect for 1,000 homes being built within our community. So you'd be looking for following through in the Scottish Government policy in terms of affordable homes and the percentage within the development. We had been open for a new school, and we lost that argument. We're securing 5 classroom units with the conditions through the Section 75. GP provisions, another miss in terms of residents are moving into that area. So, but I think it is incumbent upon us as a council and the applicant to try and secure benefits for the residents that are moving into this area. And so the early issues of the development of this site, which are no doubt complex, there's a lot of land material getting moved around there. We know it's an old bell area. I'm surprised there's no artefacts that have been thrown up. Indeed, to understand it's a raised beach, so like our other raised beach in Clonmacnoise, there's been gold torques found on that. So going back in history, there might be some evidence now, though our archaeologist says there's nothing there. But I think we're looking for a bit of a due care with the applicants and the developers in terms of how they develop the site, protect the trees, restore our active travel route, and create an attractive area that our citizens are going to be living in. And that's why it's so important, I think, for things like the play spaces, the open spaces, our public art strategy, that the local community get buy-in to that. So we have been given some assurances today that the planning process and the applicants will deliver that for us. And approving this today with the conditions, presumably, that is our hope as a planning committee, that we get a good quality development, although we recognise there are those of missed opportunities. So aside from that, I support the hard work and the application and the conditions that we have. And I think we're absolutely dead right as a committee to insist on properly worded planning conditions and that they meet the 5 tests of planning conditions. And for me, I kind of wish there was a bit more guidance coming from the Scottish Government and some of the model conditions that could be applied. I don't get a sense that engagement has happened with these applications. And that's all I'd like to say in the application. And just wish the applicants and the developers well in taking the development forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Right. Well, let me also add my congratulations to our underpowered, if you like, manpower terms, planning department for getting through the work. It can be. Okay, the paper asked us to, on page 9, section 2, these are the recommendations, but basically asking us to approve it according to the following conditions, and that is conditions stated and understood, shall we say. On that basis, are we prepared to approve the paper? Show of hands, please. Excellent, that's unanimous. Thank you very much for that. Thank you for your contributions, visitors. And we now move on to item 5. Give you a chance to do the text. So 2-minute break to go to recharge our glasses as well. Plug in.